Hi, everyone. Welcome to Our Disabled Future, a series where disabled voices lead the way. I'm your host, Nico, and it is a good day for disability inclusion. Each day, during Disability Pride Month and beyond, I'm amplifying real disabled stories, where we are, where we want to go, and how the heck we're going to get there. Together, I hope. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Ryan. Let's dive in. Hi, Ryan. Thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks, Nico. It's awesome to be here and happy Disability Pride.
Happy Disability Pride. So, Ryan, tell us about yourself and about your disabled life.
Well, that's a loaded but awesome place to start. I work at the intersection of policy and advocacy um, in all that I do, and it's a fun place to be and allows me to both live authentically and place the center of what I do at making the world more inclusive, not just for myself, but and for everybody with a disability. And I have the added benefit and joy of working. I'm also a proud service dog handler of Canine Companions dog Lovey. She is my second service dog from Canine Companions, who is a successor to my service dog Pico, who was with me for 11 years and passed away in October of 24. So my relationship with Lovey is relatively new. We got matched in May. It's now July, so we're coming up on month May, June, July. This is month 2 now. That we've been matched up. So it's been quite a journey for us to learn each other and what that looks like. And it's been a lot of fun. But that's me in a nutshell right now. And again, I really just appreciate the opportunity to be here and have these kind of conversations during Disability Pride and to center disabled voices. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that Pico and Lovey are giving you such great relationship and help as well. What does a disability friendly future look like for you?
I think primarily, and thanks for the question, Nico. I think primarily that's a future where um, inclusivity is something that is centered in design for companies, for just our general environments, and not an afterthought that gets thrown together because somebody with a disability begins working somewhere or someone with a disability lodges a complaint against someone, and suddenly those companies are on the defensive and needing to respond with what they're going to say or do in response to something like that. It's making inclusivity a natural part of the experience as opposed to a afterthought. That's the primary thing that I think about. It also is about centering disability inclusion across the board, whether we're talking about um, hiring more disabled people for uh, different roles across companies, making sure that policies are more inclusive. I always talk passionately and enthusiastically about the benefits and joys of remote work and what that does for the disability employment numbers and how that allows more disabled people to um, participate in employment and what that does for the metrics and the numbers and the job force. Um, it's I don't think it's one thing necessarily, but a general attitude about making sure that disability is thought about as a natural part of life and not something that needs to be responded to um, in a piecemeal fashion. It is a natural part of life that, and I think a lot of us think through this in this way that we know it is the one group that you can join at any time. And I, that is both a true fact and a fact that I sometimes don't love to center in these conversations. But it does get people to think through it differently. The reason that I say I don't like to center it is because Um, I I would prefer that people think of disability as again a natural part of life. And when you say to somebody, the reason that you should care is that this could be you at some future point, I think it is not the strongest argument to make, like I said, but it does get people to think maybe it could be, right? But it's not the most natural evolution to get somebody to think about broader inclusion. Hey, you should care because this could be you tomorrow. No, you should care because it's the right thing to do, because it's humanity. It's looking at disability and not othering us. Um, that's what it looks like to me.
That's a very comprehensive picture. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate your answer. And in that answer, I hear calls for greater inclusion, and then wider inclusion as well. Inclusion in all aspects of daily society and life. I think
I mean,
it's, it's
that's the
it,
goal, right?
it is. It's easy. I think it's easy and good to have that goal. Everybody can say we should be more accessible, and then that's easy to get consensus on. The more difficult question is how do we implement more access? What does that policy implementation look like? What do you think? You're uniquely equipped to answer this.
I think, first of all, it's doing exactly what you're doing. I think it's what's driving this podcast, right? It's getting the stories out in the public forum and telling them in such a way that they're resonating with the public at large, whether they're disabled or not. But primarily, look, we don't need to necessarily preach to our own. We know what the challenges are. So when I think about this, I try to, in my advocacy, think about it as bringing people into the discussion that wouldn't otherwise naturally get there. And doing that effectively, again, it starts with getting the story out there in general and saying, this is something that happens. This is an experience that happens. Just recently I posted about going to um, a to get my professional photo taken with my girlfriend and my service dog, and we had made an appointment um, at a company or a store called the Picture People. They work out of several locations, but they're basically a photo studio that was working out of a local mall. And my girlfriend and I scheduled the appointment online, went through all of the initial um, questionnaires and things like that, and gave them information, paid for the deposit, um, and we showed up, and we're all prepared with our outfits, and we're essentially told that we could not get our photo taken because despite a 45-minute Uber ride to the location, and again all the prep that had gone into coordinating this day, that photos involving pets had to be scheduled as the last photo of the day. Uh, this was jarring, of course, because Lovey is not a pet; she is a service animal, and under federal law, um, afforded the protections that go along with that, which means anywhere that I'm allowed to go as a handler, so is my service dog. And the crux of why this relates to your question is about bringing to the forefront these scenarios that a lot of people don't think through or think about, how that discrimination plays out in sort of a day-to-day thing, something that's so simple and so basic, right? As I want to go get my photo taken with my girlfriend and capture this moment between the three of us, and it became an ordeal. And for most people, it's not, right? Um, Coincidentally, shout out to J.C. Penney in that same local mall. We went to across the way and said, "Here's what happened at the Picture People studio. Do you have time to squeeze us in because we're here with our outfits and things?" And they kind of said, the same thing initially. Our policy says, if you're working with a pet, it has to be the last photo of the day. But they also, in a complete 180, recognized, hey, Lovey is not a pet. She is a working service animal. And as such, they adjusted their policy. We got our photo taken, and yay for JCPenney for understanding that distinction. So back to your initial question, it's about creating these scenarios where when you bring the public in, you're explaining to them things that might not always occur to them because it's not their experience, right? So having opportunities like this podcast, or having opportunities like my platform on LinkedIn to highlight, here's the scenario and experience I went through as a disabled person as a wheelchair user, as a service dog handler, uh, that is exhausting. There's also, I talked about in that recent post, um, that even getting to that location, that Uber ride, was a start. It started as a denial because I had opted for a regular Uber. I did not specify Uber Pet, and that was a denial. That's been uh, a particular point that's been super centered in my advocacy, because that's when I started documenting the degree to which service dogs and rideshare, that point of contention has long existed, and I've documented that for close to a decade now. Um, so it's about bringing people into the fold in these conversations that they wouldn't otherwise be thinking about until somebody centers it to them and says, this is why this is a problem, this is why this needs awareness, this is why these things that a lot of the that non-disabled people take for granted because they don't have to run up against these brick walls, having to do the emotional labor of being a disabled person and then having to explain and justify your existence so that you can experience the same joys in life.
Thank you. I love that you, I love how you put it, right? That how we get this to happen is by posing everyday challenges that somehow go unseen and unaddressed unless we bring them up. That's a great position to have.
Yeah, and I think the one more thing that I'll add, Nico, is a lot of it, like we were just talking about this experience that I shared. Um, both of these, the contrast of these two companies, Picture People on the one side and then JCPenney on the other. This happened just a couple of days ago, so this is very fresh in my mind. But it speaks to this other part, which is, you asked how do we get here? How do we make these things a reality? And it starts with inclusive hiring practices, because the the folks that make these policies, it all starts with the C-suite and where these policies are created. And the more inclusivity you have in your workplace, the more inclusivity you have across the board and in the boardroom, you're more likely to create inclusive policies because you have inclusivity in the people that are sitting at the table making these decisions happen. And that's something I'm super passionate about.
Thank you so much. Ryan, as we close our time together today, I want to give you a chance that you and I, as disabled people, rarely get, and that is a chance to brag about yourself. You could something you've got going on currently, or maybe you recently accomplished something that you should brag about. If you want people to find you online, how can they do that? This is just
Sure.
space for you to be your own cheerleader. Let's hear it.
Awesome. Thanks, Nico. I appreciate that so much, man. Um, I was recently featured in a documentary. Um, that documentary was an amazing opportunity to highlight my work and experience getting matched with Lovey, with my new service dog. It was a documentary that was put together by Canine Companions to highlight the work that they do, and they asked me to be a part of it, and I'm so grateful to them, because what it did was allow me to um, you know showcase and allowed canon companions to showcase not only the work that they do, but put a real life, experience front and center on the camera. Again, it's putting, as the theme of our chat seems to be, how do we center these stories? By telling them, right? So I'm super proud of the fact that when I was at training with Lovey back in May, Canon Companions asked me if I could be a part of this documentary, and as a result of that, my 2-week journey getting matched with Lovey from from day one was documented, and then the cameras followed us for a good portion of our training process, and I think that's centered around the idea of we're going to highlight the great work this organization does, and here's why the public needs to know about it and care about it. So I'm super proud of that work. I'm also super proud of and happy about the work that I do as a federal employee on behalf of the American people. I'm always thrilled to get a chance to give back in that capacity. What else can we brag about? I mean, let me let me think through that for a second, Nico. I mean, those are like, that's what's top of mind for me right now. As you can see, I'm struggling with this question because I don't brag about myself much. But yeah, I'm really proud of that, and I'm proud to always be an advocate for the disability community and continue to share my story, highlight the stories of others, and connect with people as we continue to do that as a collective.
Thank you for your service and for your advocacy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And again, I'm so happy to have these conversations, and again, especially during Disability Pride. But the thing that I think is super important to highlight in this moment is Disability Pride is the month of July is great. I love it, but I also wish we didn't need it, right? If we do this right, and we bring enough people into the fold through telling stories and explaining to them why disability is a human part of the human experience, and if we're all lucky enough to live long enough, you will get there, right? The running theme that I always joke about when I talk about disability in interviews is that you are pre-disabled, and that it kind of sounds like a mafia threat, right? You're going to be disabled soon, but that's mathematically true, right? Um, so disability is a year, it doesn't stop being Disability Pride just because the calendar flips to August. It's a 365-day, 7-day-a-week experience, and it can be great. It can be empowering. It can also be exhausting from an advocacy standpoint. But either way, it's an opportunity to educate and inform. But ideally, we get to a place where it's so natural it doesn't have to be done. That's the goal, right? At least that's how I think about it. And so, as much as I love Disability Pride in July and having these conversations and getting to connect with creators like you who have these great podcasts and platforms, I wish we didn't need them. I wish that disability wasn't thought of as so special that it needed to be highlighted and talked about this way, but we still need it right now. And so as long as we still need it, change, I believe firmly that change will happen. I also believe through experience that change is slow. And so as long as we have people willing to do the advocacy work, and folks like you who are the creators and putting that work out there, we will get there. But it is a collective effort of the community to bring people in and explain why it's important. And so to that end, I thank you for having your project, and for them doing the work to edit this conversation at some point and put it out into the world. It's super important.
Thank you. And I can put some of your links and work in the video description when I do post this video.
Sure. Yeah. Just my website is probably the main central place. And I think it's down here actually. It's just my name, ryanhonig.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on various socials along with that same handle. So I hope to see everybody there and can follow my work there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. All right,
Thanks,
folks.
thanks, Nico. Appreciate it.
Of course. Tune in next time. Remember, this is our disabled future, and we're building it one day at a time together. Wherever you go and whatever you do, I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Bye.